Hello everyone, Reginald Scott here and welcome to the video. So today I'm going to show you how to wash your bike to a OCD level. And the reason I say OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is because I actually have it. Ask my wife. I am a sort of a painfully, annoyingly tidy person, and I really do take pride in my personal belongings. And I think I'm the best person to show you an extreme bike wash. This possibly goes a little bit too far, but this is a relatively high standard, I would say, of what a bike wash should be. I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks that I use to wash my bike and clean my bike and maintain the bike as I go. And we'll start off by letting you know what kind of mileage that I'm doing to show you why the bike looks in this condition. So I ride on average 150 to 300 kilometers a week. And this is what my bike looks like after that. I recommend washing your bike at least once a week or every 300 kilometers. I use a wet lube. It's a medium density oil lube on my chain. And this is the results of that after that week's worth of riding. It's very important to wash your bike fairly regularly to maintain the bike, to look for damage and to prevent things from wearing out too soon. So let's get on with the wash. Now, here we are removing the chain. In order to get a good bike wash, you need to remove the chain. There are plenty of chain washing tools out there on the market that profess to give you a good clean chain by clipping some set of rollers to your chain or set of brushes. I've used those things. I've used both cheap ones and expensive, and they've never given me as good a results as this method. So this method, you remove the chain, you put it in a pot. This is just a plastic pot with a metal lid. I'd recommend not using glass, obviously, because you can break the glass with shaking it or just dropping it on the floor by accident while you're shaking it. You stick the chain in there in a plastic tub, get something with a decent, well-fitting lid. This one actually doesn't fit all that well. And stick in your degreaser and give it a good old shake. Now, the degreaser I just put in is extremely dirty, and that is because I have several stages of a bike wash. In my first stage, I use an old recycled degreaser, which has been used on many different chains, and I just pour that back into the pot and reuse it. If you let it sit for a week, which unfortunately this one doesn't get a chance to do because I'm washing a lot of bikes all the time, but yours at home will get a chance to do this. If you leave it sitting for a week, all the sediment will drop to the bottom and you'll actually be able to reuse that degreaser fairly easily. But that's the initial wash of the chain. So degreaser goes in, vigorous shaking, and then you pour it back in your jar or a bottle, and then you rinse it. Then we add dish soap. It's just normal dish soap. It's green, but you can use any color of dish soap you want. It doesn't have to be anything special. I avoid using branded stuff or bike specific stuff or even car stuff just because it's expensive and it doesn't really give me any significant benefit in cleaning power. Standard dish soap, spray that in there. I cut mine 50-50 soap to water. And there you go, then you give it another shake, and that just removes degreaser from the chain and also helps remove some extra dirt from the chain. I don't recommend any particular one as such. My favorite I've ever used is a stuff called Gunk, which was an engine degreaser that I used to buy in the UK. That was phenomenal stuff. Very harmful to the environment, but it was good. And if you're reusing it like this, it's not so bad. But you can use everything from the branded degreasers are fine, the bike-specific ones, all the way down to petroleum-based products like diesel or petrol. If you're going to do that, just be really careful how you store it. Make sure you store it in a correct fuel can or chemical can, and store it in a safe, cold place where it's not going to ignite on you. Probably don't store it in the house as well. An outhouse or a shed or something is probably a better place to store it. Just be aware of the risks. So once that's been through its first cycle of cleaning, we do the same again. So you just keep going round basically. First adding the degreaser, then shaking, pouring the degreaser back, rinsing, adding soap, shaking with the soap, pouring that off, rinsing, and going back to the degreaser. And you can do this as many times as you want, as I will demonstrate. I do it numerous times in this video, until you reach the cleanliness of chain that you are looking for. You can also leave it sitting in the degreaser for a while you wash the rest of the bike. That always helps as well. It adds a little bit of cleaning power while you're doing something else. What we're aiming for is to get a completely clean looking degreaser after the process. Now, if your chain is particularly dirty, I'll just demonstrate here. What you can do when you first start out is just soak the chain in degreaser for a bit, pull it out, lay it on a nice flat surface. I like to lay it in this pattern with, sort of 4 lengths of chain stretched out. And then I get a nice brush, plastic brush, and I just brush the surface of the chain, flip it over, brush the other side. And this just helps remove sort of stubborn, stuck-on dirt. I have to do this with customer chains quite often, but I don't generally do it with my own chain because I don't let my own chain get that bad. I guess that's the top tip for having a really clean chain and bike. The more you wash your bike, the cleaner your bike will be. If you don't wash your bike for, 6 months to a year, then you will really struggle to get it clean because that dirt will just be too stuck on, basically. I have some customers who, when they bring me bikes for their yearly service, their bikes look like they've not been washed in the entire year. And I can tell you that it takes a good long time to get those bikes clean. Also, those customers end up buying more chains and cassettes than everybody else, unfortunately. So, which is something I don't do very often. I don't often change my chain or my cassette, so it obviously goes to show. Here's what we're looking for: clean degreaser. Once that degreaser is totally clean, then we can move on. So, again, rinse, soap, shake. But once you open the jar and that degreaser looks completely clean, you're getting somewhere. There we go. Looks pretty good now. If the chain is not going straight back on the bike and being lubed, leave it in degreaser so it doesn't rust. Next, moving on to the wheel, give it a good spray with degreaser from your bottle and give it a scrub with a plastic brush. This specialist plastic brush was $1.10 from the local hardware store or, cheapo shop. You don't need to spend big money on cleaning gear like this for your bike. Like I say, general plastics brush will work as long as the bristles are long enough to go down in between the teeth of the cassette. With Shimano cassettes, you need longer bristles than you do with SRAM. But yep, give it a good scrub. Do that a couple of times until it looks clean. Rinse it off and you're good to go. Next, sponge. Get yourself a decent sponge. This one's it's a car sponge, for washing cars. Spray it on your dish soap. Spray it on the rim, spray it on the hub, spray it on the sponge. And then go around the outside of the wheel to begin with, rubbing off any dirt on the tyres. Give it a good old clean. And then around the rim. And of course the cassette as well, just to remove any of that degreaser that might still be on there. Get in between the hub and the spokes. Don't forget to wipe off all the spokes because dust does build up on those as well. And in between the spoke holes as well. When you come to rinse the wheel off, don't forget to leave the valve core at the top of the wheel so that you don't wash soap and water down inside the rim. Not so bad if you've got a hole in the rim to let the water out, but some brands don't. So it's just an extra precaution to take. You don't need a pressure washer, by the way. Hose pipe with the thumb on top is perfectly fine. Right, moving on to the bicycle frame. Push the rear derailleur inboard so it's sticking out like that. And then spray on your degreaser. A liberal spray of degreaser all over the moving parts, the drivetrain, and I also like to do the brakes as well. Dirt gets up in the brakes, brake dust, and so on and so forth. So get the degreaser in there. If you've got disc brakes, not such a good idea. But then again, who has disc brakes on their road bike? Oh dear. But yeah, anyway, don't put degreaser in your disc brakes. Right, and the super special tool for cleaning the chainring is a toothbrush. Yep, simple toothbrush. When you wear it out, just get it up there and it's perfect for cleaning out the derailleur cage. I also find this is another cheap brush from a hardware store. It's just a little bit longer bristles, and I use that for cleaning the chain rings. In between the chain rings, give it a rinse. Again, do it as many times as you need to make it look clean. Same for the jockey wheels, the rear derailleur. Get your trusty toothbrush out and start scrubbing. There are teeth on the jockey wheels, so what better brush to use than a toothbrush? And the great thing about toothbrush is it can go up inside between the cage and really help remove some of that dirt. So that's a great tool to use. It's the best tool I've found for doing it. You can get these pipe cleaner things, but they're just too fiddly and they wear out too fast as well. Toothbrushes are better. Then clean the brake calipers. Squeeze the brake calipers with your fingers as well while you're doing it, so you can, so that the calipers move and you can actually clean between them. And also a good spot to use with the toothbrush is just behind the fork there, in that tight little gap. Sometimes dirt gets up in there that is difficult to remove with a sponge. So spray the bike down, get rid of all that degrease that you've just got on there. Check everything, make sure everything looks nice and clean. If it doesn't, go over it again. It's that simple. There's not many magic tricks to washing a bike other than just patience and dedication. So now we're on to soaping down the frame. I like to spray a mist of soap onto the frame, my 50-50 soap and water mixture onto the frame, and I also spray a good helping onto the sponge I'm using. This is just a car sponge. Again, I like to use car sponges because they're a bit hardier than dish sponges. With your car sponge, make sure you cut it into 2 pieces. Now, the reason I do this is because a car sponge is way too big for cleaning a bicycle. It's designed for a car. This smaller sort of oblong of sponge is way handier for getting in between places. Don't forget to soap up your jockey wheels as well. A lot of the time when people have dirty chains straight away when they start riding, or when they lube the chain, it's because they forgot to properly clean the jockey wheels. Even though you've scrubbed them with degreaser, go over them again with soap. You notice here my long sponge, it's really easy to get in those gaps in the chainring, and I can even push it in the holes in the chainring much easier than I could if it was a full-size car sponge. And you can do this little trick where you push it in one of the holes and then turn it, and it actually cleans behind the BB as well. Again, I see a lot of people with clean bikes, but you remove the chain rings and there's this dirt around the back of the chain ring because they haven't thought to go in behind. So with the long sponge, you can get in there behind the chain ring. You get between the bottle cages as well, like flossing almost. Again, people with clean bikes sometimes that come in the store, look behind the bottle cages, and that is where you'll find dirt build-up because they haven't flossed behind their bottle cage. So remember, it's clean your gears with your toothbrush and floss behind your bottle cages. And there you go. So that small sponge is more than enough for a bicycle frame. Don't forget to do the top tube and remove it from the bike stand as well. If you leave the bike on the bike stand and wash around the clamp that holds your bike, you'll obviously get dirty spots on the top tube. So you've got to remove the bike frame and wash it separately. You can also do this on the floor later if you put the wheels back in the bike, but I just like to do it now because it's quicker. There you go. Coming over to the front of the bike, don't forget to wash the hoods and the shifters and the bar tape. It depends on what kind of bar tape you have. If you've got something like a Physique Soft Touch bar tape, 3mm thick, they tend to soak up water quite a lot, so I would avoid washing those so much. But if it's the tacky touch like this or a plasticky kind of feeling bar tape, go at it. Just wash it and make sure it dries off properly as well. Clean behind the cables, underneath the stem, of course. Remember that dirt and water is going to drop down from the top of the bike and go underneath things. So clean from the top and then clean down. But also remember to clean underneath things because that's where that water, dirt and soap is going to collect after the bike wash. Remember, underneath the bottom bracket as well. So rinse the bike off, and then we can start putting back the chain. So this chain is relatively dry. You can give it a good old shake before you put it back on, and you can also reattach it to the bike with the quick link, and then just give the chain ring a few spins backwards vigorously, and that will throw a lot of water off the chain. You want to get the chain as dry as you can before we lube it. Obviously don't let the chain leave the chain sitting around wet before lubing it. Don't do that, because obviously things will start to rust, and you'll often get rust build up on the rollers or in places where you can't even see it. So it's best to just shake off that chain and then get it lubed as soon as possible. So next stage is we're going to bring the bike inside, and that's where we're going to do our polishing and detailing and lubrication. So what you do is you start with the quick link, because that's your point of reference, and you squeeze your little lube bottle so you get a small blob of lube, and you place that blob right on the round part of the roller in between the two plates. Don't get it on the plates, go in between, and you want that oil to just soak down in between the plates and get at the sides of the rollers, and just keep going round until you reach back to the quick link, and then that lubrication is done. One blob for each roller. Then shift up through the gears. This gets the oil spreading around inside the chain and helps force it down between the rollers. Once you've shifted through the gears, it also gives you an opportunity to tune your gears while you're at it. Once you've done that, you need to wipe off the excess oil. Okay, so get yourself a clean rag. It must be clean. I have a clean rag and I have a dirty rag. A dirty rag I use to wipe the chain when the bike is not washed, and this is my clean rag for when the bike is washed. Rotate the crank about 10 to 20 times, running through the chain, through your rag, and there we have all the excess oil we don't need. We can check to see if we've removed enough oil from the chain. Just make sure again that the sides of the chain are not oily. Give them a good wipe. You just want the oil in between the rollers. So looking at the chain closely here, let's have a look. How do you tell if it's got oil inside? There we are. So if you push the rollers, they actually sink down slowly. That shows that there is oil in there. And after you've done poking the chain, your finger shouldn't look wet. It should just look a little bit shiny. If you've got blobs of oil appearing on your glove or on your finger, then your chain is over-oiled and you need to wipe it again. So this is one of the best tools for cleaning bikes. It's the simple cotton bud. And instead of using them for cleaning your ears, use them for getting out water in every single little hole, nook and cranny on the bike, especially the bolts. All these bolts here are titanium, so they won't rust, but they do collect water and they do collect dirt. If you have steel bolts on your stem, for example, it's even more important you get that water out. When the cotton bud becomes waterlogged, change it for a dry one, and then afterwards dip the cotton bud in some WD-40 and go round again, getting that in all those steel bolts, and that will prevent the inside of the bolts from rusting. Next, moving on to the frame, you'll see there's some water spots on the frame. You'll get this whether you wash a carbon bike or a titanium bike. Some of this is stuff that's residue from your water supply. What you need is a piece of kitchen paper, or a paper towel as some people call it. This is what I use for soaking up messes in the kitchen, so we call it kitchen paper. And you spray on some WD-40, fold it a few times, work that WD-40 into the membrane of the paper, and then get that on the frame and start polishing. This works for everything: titanium frames, aluminium frames, steel frames, and carbon fiber as well. You're not looking to coat the frame in WD-40 as such, you're just using it to polish with. So just really go over it well, and then afterwards go over it with a dry piece of kitchen paper to just wipe off any excess oil or any oil that's been left behind. You can use it to polish your hubs. You use it everywhere pretty much. There we go, give the hubs a good polish. You'll notice the little holes between the hubs. That's another place you need to go in with your cotton buds. And then after you're done, that piece of paper, that dry piece of paper that you use to polish the frame finally with, you can then use it on your wheels to polish the wheels as well. Use the valve core as your reference point when polishing the wheel. Don't forget to do both sides and in between the spokes as well. There will be dirt there, you might not be able to see it, and you may have already washed the wheel, but you will bring off dirt with the kitchen paper. You can use the paper that had the WD-40 on it, or at least for the second polish, but just make sure you give it a polish with a dry piece of paper afterwards. You don't want any of that on your braking surface. So there you have it, folks. That's how I wash my bike to a fairly OCD level. Now, for many of you, this might be going a bit too far with how I clean my bike and my chain. All I would say is that the cleaner you can get your bike, the faster it will be, and the longer all the components will last. And taking great interest in cleaning your bike and cleaning your components will also bring up potential future problems. So you will spot mechanical issues and other issues with your bike much sooner if you clean it well. Anything on this bike now that needs doing is the bar tape, so it's wearing out a little bit there. So you may also be in the camp of people that think that I didn't go far enough, and perhaps you clean your bike even better than I do, in which case I would recommend you put in the comments below where I went wrong, or where you would go further. Maybe tell people your tips and tricks on how you get your bike extra clean, and we can all benefit from that as well, as I certainly can, because I'm always open to new ideas. Cleaning a bike like this takes about an hour and a half, and obviously if you don't have time for that, I will be doing a future video on a quick wash. So how to wash your bike effectively in the shortest possible amount of time. So there you go. Until that video, I'll say to you all, ride safe, folks, and thank you for watching.